So if you like to, you can find those on YouTube and Facebook through the Catholic Renewal Center website is the best way to find those, or you can just do a search on the internet for Zechariah Prayer Breakfast, and all of our breakfasts usually come up then. Please don't take the badges home. I worked so hard on these badges, except for the one that I goofed up. We'd like to keep them. Meals are $20 now. Everybody knew that except one guy. So there's no actually, we don't actually take up a donation anymore. If you want to make a donation, you can do that during check-in time. You don't really have to. Now that we're charging $20, we pretty much cover everything anyway. Okay, our regular prayer guy, Tom Bayer, is in need of prayer himself. He's really having a hard time fighting cancer. And I also want to mention our friend Ernie Frost, who is, he's refusing treatment for his cancer, his stage 4 cancer. And so we're praying for him and Tom, and actually for all of our men. It's shocking. There's more of us than we might want to think that are hovering on the edge of extinction. So we pray for all of our men that are dealing with the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death, and we pray that all of us will have a peaceful death. Mary, are you listening? Our next announcement: David Clayton has some pictures that his wife has made that are for sale. They'll be over here at the end of the thing, and David can tell you all about them. Zip Rzeppa also brought a handout that has to do with, I think that has to do with, what is it?
Speaker series.
Speaker series. So, and those are on the table, so you know more about them than I do actually at this point. But there you have it. And our next one is going to be, it's the only one we got scheduled right now. We don't have any scheduled for 2027. Our next breakfast is going to be Deacon Steve Schlichler, who comes from my parish. And that'll be on October 10th. And I don't think there's any other announcements. We might have food left over. They usually let me know if there is. If there is, they'll bundle it up over there, and you're welcome to take it home or wherever you want to take it. We give preference to somebody who's visiting a food pantry later today. But other than that, anybody can have it in any amount. And that's about it. So I'm giving it back to David.
All right. And if we would, in gratitude to the women and the people who helped set up our breakfast today. Yeah, delicious. Good stuff. It's, bagged up back there, ready to go for anybody who'd like it. Check, check. Oh, look at that. So just in case anyone who is either here for the first time doesn't know me, I'm David Whitlock, Gary Whitlock's son here. I have the privilege of introducing today's speaker as if he needed any introduction. I think anyone who's lived in St. Louis for, I don't know, if you grew up here, you definitely know who Zip Rzeppa is. I was first introduced to him, like maybe most of you were, in the 80s and 90s, him doing his sportscasting work whenever network TV was the jam, right? Whenever pretty much people tuned in. You probably remember the Zippo Awards, the best, the worst, the weirdest performances in the wild and wacky, wonderful world of sports, right? And so Zip, even after his broadcasting days, continued doing work, God's work. He's done different things with Goodwill Organization, the St. Vincent de Paul Organization, Angel's Arms, and nowadays, and this is also reflective of those handouts, posters he got, He's the executive director of Matter Media. He's written a couple of books, one of them, My Rock and Salvation, that's for young adults, and then For a Greater Purpose, My Life Journey, his autobiography. So we're delighted to have him here with you today. So without further ado, please welcome Zip Rzeppa.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, friends. Great to be here. Happy to be here. At my age, I'm happy to be anywhere. I mean, signs of getting old, you know, they say there are 3 signs of getting old. The first sign is memory loss. And I can't remember the other 2, so. Anyway, by the reaction, when David says Zip Awards, I heard you guys clapping. I mean, I'm thinking, man, I ain't speaking to any youth group today. That was a long time ago. That was in the 80s and 90s, right? That was, wow.
Before YouTube, man, you were the best.
Before YouTube, that's right, that's right. I'm always excited when somebody who's fairly young remembers me, you know? I was at a bread company not a while ago, and there was this fairly young woman behind the counter, and I placed my order, and she said, well, what name would you like me to put your order under? And I said, you can put it under Zip. And her eyes grew wide, and she said, Zip? I said, yep. And her eyes grew even wider, and she said, Zip? I said, yeah, it's me. So she goes, Zip? Man, mister, that's a really cool name. Can't get no respect from the young people. But the old guys get me too. I was at the mall the other day, and I'm just walking along, and this old geezer's coming the other way, and he gets right next to me, and he stops, and he starts finger pointing me, and he says, hey, 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 didn't you used to be Zip Rzeppa? Anyway, had a long career in TV, as you know. We're not here to talk about TV. I did it in 5 different cities, 6 different television stations. It was fun, it was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was exhausting, pressure-packed. I became a workaholic, and at 43, I decided it's got to be more to life. So I quit right in my prime, and I offered myself to the Lord. I said, Lord, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Well, when you open yourself up to the Lord that way, look out. The Lord had ideas for me that I never would have envisioned, never would have asked for, never would have dreamed of. His call to me came through a phone call from a priest whom I did not know, who I'd never heard before. His name was Father Placid. He was a priest from a religious order. And he calls me up. I don't even know how he got my number. And he said, hey, I heard you're Catholic, you're out of TV. Would you like to help me do some evangelization? So I'm thinking, okay, Lord, here's the call. I said, sure, Father. I said, where are we going to do that? He said, we're going to do it in the most crime-ridden, drug-infested, dark and dangerous neighborhoods in North St. Louis where nobody wants to go. I'm thinking, oh. So I said, well, you'll be going with me, Father, right? He goes, wearing the collar and everything. He said, no, I won't. But I'll send somebody with you. I'll send a layman. I'm thinking, is he big? I'm thinking this could get dangerous. So the guy he sets me up with is a mystic, a guy by the name of Declan Duffy from Dublin, Ireland. Declan Duffy was miraculously healed of multiple sclerosis at Lourdes. He moves to the United States with his wife and 3 children, and in gratitude to God for his healing, he decides to devote the rest of his life to serving the poor. So this is the guy they set me up with. So Declan and I go into the inner city, and the neighborhood they sent us into was worse than I thought it was going to be. And I didn't think it was going to be very good from the priest's description. All the blinds in the houses were drawn shut, right in the middle of the day because of all the drug dealers and drug deals going on. So we get out of the car, we ring the doorbell of the first house, and we see the blinds go up a slit, and we read the lips of the guy inside, and he goes, detectives. Blinds go down, never opens the door. We're 2 little white guys in this all African-American neighborhood. So we go to the next house, ring the doorbell, blinds go up, we read the lips of the guy inside, and he goes, Jehovah's Witnesses. Doesn't answer the door. We go to the third house, ring the doorbell, blinds go up, blinds go down, and all of a sudden the door swings wide open, and this very large African-American brother looks at my friend Declan, Then he looks at me and he says, "Hey, man, you Zip Rzeppa, you come to put me on the Zippo Awards? Is that your cameraman?" Not exactly. But I'll tell you what, I did that work for 4 years, 50 weeks a year, a set time, 2 hours every week, in rain, snow, sleet, hail, cold, heat, with different partners. And it was an incredible experience to reach out to our brothers and sisters in their environment. Now, people say, well, did you have any conversions? Well, we had 3, which may sound like a modest amount over 4 years, but we planted a lot of seeds, and you don't know the good that can come from these kind of things. But anyway, from this experience, I really felt called through these 4 years of giving my life to the Lord in service to others. Jesus said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And I'm thinking, if the Son of God came not to be served, but to serve, who am I to say, I don't think so. I think I'll just live for pleasure, do my own thing, let everybody be. No, I gotta serve. So I opened myself up to that. Declan was working at Murs Goodwill, and he said, hey, why don't you come in and see where I work? I said, okay. So I came to take a look at that place, and they were serving people with extreme mental and physical disabilities. They had a halfway house there on the 7th floor for women coming out of prison. They had a sheltered workshop for people with extreme disabilities so difficult that they would never work competitively. Then they had a division where they're helping people find jobs. So I became a humble job developer at the whopping salary of $22,500 after making a little bit more than that in television. And I began helping people with disabilities find jobs. I could tell you stories all day about the people I was blessed to work with. One story, Declan was at Walmart one night with his wife, and in the checkout line was this woman in front of him in a wheelchair. And she had multiple disabilities. She had multiple sclerosis, which Declan recognized that, which put her in the wheelchair. She was legally blind. She could not speak intelligibly, and she could not use much of her limbs. So anyway, she checked out, Declan checked out, didn't think anything of it. I don't know if he slipped the social worker's card or what, but the next morning I come in and work at Murs Goodwill, and who is sitting in his office at 9 o'clock in the morning but the woman from Walmart in her wheelchair from the night before. So she says, I heard you help people get jobs. Could you help me? And Declan said, well, sure, we'll try. So he called me in. We worked together as a team. And we found out she was represented by Rehab Services for the Blind because she was legally blind. So we called them to get a referral so we could go to work to help this woman whose name was Kim. And we said, okay, this woman is over here. We'd like a referral. And they said, oh, that's Kim. Yes. We're not going to give you a referral for Kim. She's 40 years old, and she's never had a job in her life. She's got multiple disabilities, and we just don't think she can work. Well, Declan challenged that. He said, you know, she got up to the 3rd floor of this downtown building at 9 o'clock in the morning, and she's got a can-do attitude, and we'd like to give it a shot. So very reluctantly, they said, okay, you got 30 days to find Kim a job. Good luck. So I think, what could Kim do? Well, we knew she could get to Walmart because she was there the night before with her group home staff. So we took her over to Walmart, and they had these positions open for greeters. You know, when you walk in, people are greeting you and all that stuff. So it was a 4-hour shift. She was incontinent. Walmart didn't want to do the incontinence thing, so we carved the job down to a 2-hour shift. And after great encouragement from Declan and myself, Walmart decided to give her a chance. So we're getting ready. She was going to start the following Tuesday. The following Monday, we get a phone call from her group home. And they say, we want you to tell Walmart that Kim is not going to show up and not accept this job. And we said, well, why not? And they said, well, we've been thinking about this. If she takes this job, we're going to have to get her in the wheelchair, in the van. We're going to have to drive across town and get her out of the wheelchair and get her into the store. And then 2 hours later, we're going to have to go back and pick her up, get her into the van, take her back and get her into the group home. And we just think it's too much. Well, this is quite a few years ago. In those days, this was before cell phones. She was on a speaker phone, and Kim was in the room. So I said, Kim, what do you think? And I'll never forget this as long as I live. In her halting voice, Kim says, Zip, we're going to do whatever it takes. So I said to the people at the group home, I said, hey, you are paid to serve her. You get her in that van. You get her to Walmart. We'll see you over there tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So they got her in the van, got her to Walmart, got her into the store. We had our best job coach ready to greet her, ready to help her for as many days or weeks it would take for her to learn this job and do it effectively. And Kim, using the only abilities we could see, her smile, her spirit, and her can-do attitude, begins greeting the people coming into the Walmart. And she flourishes. So a month goes by, and Rehab Services for the Blind comes to investigate the case, and they can't believe what they're seeing. Now they throw money at the case. They buy her an electronic chat box that attaches to her wheelchair so that with her one good finger and her one good hand, she can hit 16 different buttons, all saying whatever she needs to say. Hello, welcome to Walmart. Is that an exchange? Restrooms to the right, whatever it is. And this woman did that job for 3.5 years until she contracted a kidney disease, and her poor little body couldn't fight it off. And Kim passed away. But friends, in those 3.5 years, that woman whom no one thought could work touched the lives of not hundreds, but thousands of people who walked through those doors at Walmart. And again, I could tell you stories of so many people I was blessed to work with at MERS Goodwill, people with extreme physical and mental disabilities. At this time, I'm going through spiritual direction with Father Placid. He's still my spiritual director. He's now 93 years old. His mind is incredibly sharp. He's living in a hermitage, as he was then, out in High Ridge. Amazing guy. So he starts giving me these books to read about the saints. I'm coming out of TV. I went to Mass on Sunday, but, you know, I was working 70 hours a week covering sports and doing all kinds of crazy things. Didn't have much time to think about God, or so I thought. So he gives me the autobiography of Thomas Merton, the monk from the 20th century, and I start reading Merton, reading the saints, and I start reading things like from a quote from Merton's New Seeds of Contemplation. It goes like this, made me think. My chief care should not be to find pleasure or success, health or life or money or rest, or even things like virtue and wisdom. Still less their opposites, pain, failure, sickness, death. But in all that happens, my one desire and my one joy should be to know, here is the thing that God has willed for me. In this his love is found, and in accepting this, I can give back his love to him and give myself with it to him. For in giving myself, I shall find him, and he is life everlasting. So I begin meditating on these things. My spiritual director says, spend 30 minutes a day in silent meditative prayer. Do 10 minutes of spiritual reading, and I'm growing, and I'm thinking, Declan, the mystic, I'm working with him at MERS Goodwill, and he's telling me things like, you know, there's two kinds of people in the world. There's givers, and there's takers. What do you want to be? I'm thinking, I want to be a giver. I want to give myself, Lord, to you. So I stay at St. Vincent de Paul, or at MERS Goodwill, for about 6 years, and then I get a call out of the blue from the board president of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, and he says, we're looking for an executive director. We'd like to interview you. And I'm thinking, I'm not even a Vincentian. I don't even know what they do. So I interview with them, and they have another interview with me, another interview, and all of a sudden the board unanimously decides I should be the executive director of the St. Vincent de Paul Society in the Archdiocesan Council of St. Louis. So here I am, totally untrained, overseeing the work of 3,000 Vincentian volunteers in, at that time, 165 parishes. I mean, they're serving the poor, the needy, and the suffering. They're going out in whatever situations there are in their own parish and serving people, alleviating poverty. But I learned there that there's other kinds of poverty than the kinds we generally think of. There's the poverty of losing a loved one. There's the poverty of divorce. There's a the poverty of children leaving the faith, and the Vincentians doing the work in all these different parishes. It was a tremendous experience. I brought Declan over to work with me. We created a new prescription program, a transportation program, a car program, all kinds of things to help the Vincentians in all these parishes do the work of God. It was a tremendous experience. I was there as 5.5 years executive director, and it was time to move to a different position. So I went to Angel's Arms, which is a very small not-for-profit. It was started by a woman who could not believe that in the state of Missouri, 75% of the foster children are separated from their siblings because they'd find foster parents, but they could only take in one, and his brothers and sisters, they might not see them for a year or two or whatever. So she started this agency called Angel's Arms, and she began buying homes big enough for 6 foster kids and 2 foster parents. And she charged the foster parents $1 a year rent so they would have the time and energy to take care of the 6 foster kids without having to worry about a mortgage. So they had homes like this, and I became managing director, and I said, man, this doesn't need to be fixed. We just got to raise more money and buy more homes to serve more foster kids. So these people who started this were very good-hearted people. I mean, I just told you the story, but they weren't religious. So I'm thinking, well, we can bring prayer into this. And that's why I emphasize today the importance of prayer. I'm looking around and I think, wow, Mother Mary, help these poor foster kids. Help us put something together that can increase these homes. So I looked around and they didn't have any tax credits at that time. So from my work at St. Vincent de Paul and Murray's Goodwill, I understand you can get tax credits if you're a not-for-profit with certain limitations, but serving children is one of the qualifications. And I said, we're serving children. So I applied to the state for tax credits. And weeks went by and months went by, and you know how it goes with government and all these other things. And I'm just praying, Mother Mary, help your children, help your children. So on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, December 12th, I get a call from the state of Missouri, and they say, we are approving your application for tax credits. You've got $500,000 of tax credits you can give out to your people. But it's December 12th. These expire at the end of the year, 19 days from now. I said, Mother Mary, we need a miracle. So I'm praying to Our Lady of Guadalupe, praying, and I start calling any and all wealthy people. I've done some fundraising. I've been in the Catholic circles for a while. I've been calling these people. And 2 days before Christmas, a very wealthy man walks in, had a business in St. Louis, and he says, you're getting like a 70% return on tax credits, plus your state and your federal and everything else. So he's getting like 80 or 90% back, but you had to put the money out with no guarantee, and he had it by the end of the year. So I get a call from this guy. He says, how many tax credits do you have? I said, I got 500,000 tax credits available. He said, I'll take them all. He drives to the office. He writes us a check for $500,000. Miracle. I said, Mother Mary, thank you. And then I called the state. I said, hey, got any more of those tax credits? And they said, well, we got a couple 100,000 here. They're running out. I mean, it's only 8 days till the end of the year. I said, send me those tax credits. So again, I started calling people, praying to Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was a miracle. I said, I got 200,000 left. And on December 27th, 4 days before the end of the year, I get an envelope at work mailed in by a businessman. And in that envelope is a $100,000 personal check and a $100,000 check from his business. He says, I'll take those 200,000 tax credits. So in the span of less than 19 days, the Mother of God brings us $700,000 for the mission. We take that money, we buy 3 homes, big enough for 6 foster kids and 2 foster parents, in good neighborhoods, with grassy backyards, in good school districts, to give these kids a shot at life. So I'm over the moon, happy. I'm thinking, I tell the staff, you wait to see what the Mother of God's going to do next. So at my apartment at that time, I was living there, I had this 3-foot by 4-foot image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was framed. So I bring it into work, and I walk up the stairs, my office on the second floor, and I put it on the wall, and I say, folks, watch what's going to happen next. And to my surprise and chagrin, the founder of this organization, a good-hearted woman who started this organization to help these foster kids, comes and says, Zip, we are not a religious organization. That's a religious icon. You get it out of here right now. I said, no, you don't understand. This is the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe from the miracles that have happened in Mexico. And she brought us forward $700,000 to Zip. I don't care what you're saying. Get the thing out of this office right now. So I had no choice. I took it home, took it back to my apartment, put it where it was on the wall. I looked at that image. I said, Mary, I want to serve you. And soon after that, I left Angel's Arms and quit without a job. Fortuitously at that time, in a way, my mother was about to pass away. She was in hospice. I went down to see her and I said, Mom, God's inspired me to write a book. I don't know if there's any money in that, but I really feel led to write a book. And she was very happy. She said, you know, you're using your gifts, Christopher. You left media, you know, you can write. And I thought, well, I wrote 8,000 television sportscasts. I always wrote my own stuff. I wrote some 30-minute TV specials, and I got a degree in journalism from Boston University. Yeah, I probably could do this. So my mom passes away and leaves me enough money to pursue becoming a full-time writer, because it's going to take me a while to learn how to write a book. The concept was to write a novel. It was inspired by so many friends of mine, older people who had sons and daughters, grandsons and granddaughters who were, let's put it this way, living with sin, living with their boyfriends, their girlfriends, getting pregnant, having abortions, crushing these parents who spent all this money to put them through Catholic school and thought they did a good job raising them. And I said, wow, what if we could write a novel that reaches these people when they're young, when they're just turning in their teenage years, to teach them the theology of the body, to teach them the beauty of human sexuality created by God, reserved for the married. So I spent 1.5 years putting this together because I had to learn how to write a novel. I could write, but I had to read novels by guys who were good. I had to get books on how to write a novel. I had to start rewriting and writing and all kinds of stuff. And I wrote the novel and finished it. It was called My Rockin' Salvation. It was about a young kid in St. Louis, 25 years old, trying to make it in the rock world, because I figure young people love music. And his best friend is a guy who plays wide receiver for the St. Louis Rams. Remember the St. Louis Rams? This is back in 2014, because young people love sports. And it's a story about the young guy trying to make it, and the guy who's making millions of dollars with the Rams, he's driving the Maserati, and the two guys can't understand why the Catholic girls won't go to bed with them, these two Catholic girls, but they're intrigued because these Catholic girls are brilliant and beautiful, so they can't give up on them. And we throw in all kinds of stuff like a near-death experience, a murder, an attempted murder, a drug addiction in the band, unwanted pregnancy, because you got to make it real, but you got to make it exciting. So we published the book, and we don't know what to do with it, so I take it up to Franciscan University, because I know they work with young people, and they liked it. And they said, you know, we have these Steubenville conferences in 9 places around the country. The closest one here is Missouri State every year. I think it's this weekend. And they said, we'll put it in the takeaway bag of all the people that come to all these conferences. So all of a sudden, we got the book in the hands of 20,000 young people, teaching them about the theology of the body in a way that they might look at the book and read it. So I had some success. I got a letter soon afterwards of a kid leaving Steubenville. He says, on the bus ride home, I was on chapter 16, and the guy in that book went to confession, and the priest gave him 1 Our Father as his penance. I went to confession at the Steubenville conference. That's exactly what happened to me. He said, I cried the rest of the chapters of the book. Thank you for writing this. If we only reached that one kid, it was worth writing that book. In truth, the adults liked it better than the kids, even though I tried to make it all this exciting about the band and all this stuff. But anyway, I had a number of people, older people, who said, we cried at the end of that book. That's pretty good. Anyway, the Rams leave St. Louis, which kind of killed the book because young people like authenticity and they're reading the St. Louis Rams. They ain't in St. Louis. It's crap. Get out of this. Not going to read the book. So anyway, but I had fun writing the book. And I thought, well, let's write another one. So I wrote my life story called For a Greater Purpose, my autobiography of my life growing up and becoming a television sportscaster, playing college basketball at Boston University, getting my nickname Zip as a high school quarterback, throwing the ball without a zip on it, and then the TV stories, and then my quest to find the perfect woman because I always wanted to get married and have kids. And so a lot of stories in there about women. I had to change the names of so many women, I almost ran out of girls' names writing that thing. But anyway, I found out the perfect woman is Mary. There's only one perfect woman. So anyway, published the book in 2015, and somehow we got like 10,000 copies out there, so it was influencing people. Problem was, I didn't die soon enough. So now, that was 11 years ago, and a lot's happened in the last 11 years, so now I have to write the sequel. I'll write it much differently. I've got a lot of better ideas. I'm older now. I'm more mature and hopefully more spiritually mature. So anyway, we got these books out there, and we published them under a not-for-profit we dedicated to the Blessed Mother. We called it Mater Media. Mater is the Latin word for mother. Just like Mater Dei is the mother of God, our apostolate is called Mater Media because Mary is the mother of media. So all of a sudden, people started coming to us and saying, hey, we read your book, we read this book, or this, that. You guys publish books? We wrote a book, we have an idea, this and that, and we started to look at some of this stuff, and it was pretty good. And I said, have you been to publishers? They said, yeah, they won't give us the time of day. And we said, well, maybe we will. And we did. And we started publishing books. We started publishing fiction and nonfiction and poetry and memoirs. And all of a sudden, through the years, we're now up to 21 books we've published, all by Catholic authors, many of them first-time Catholic authors. And we got 128,000 books in print. So we're reaching people, giving these people an opportunity to tell their stories and affect people across the country. We've published books by people in Massachusetts and Virginia and Detroit and Wisconsin and Boise, Idaho, and a lot of them in St. Louis. And it's been a joy. So somewhere along the line, the Lord said, well, I'm not done with you. You're doing a good job publishing, but there's other forms of media. And I began meeting movie makers, Catholic movie makers, not kids coming out of film school trying to make their first movie, but guys who really could make outstanding movies. I met the people who did the movie Bella back in 2006. Anybody here see the movie Bella? A few. It's on Netflix. I'd recommend it. It's a great pro-life movie set in New York City. These young filmmakers at the time, they were about 30 years old, made this movie for $3.3 million, took it to the Toronto Film Festival, and in the biggest upset ever, it won the Toronto Film Festival as best film over Robert Redford's All the President's Men, budget $100 million, and all these other movies. Stunning everybody. But they couldn't get distribution because, spoiler alert, it was about a woman who is pregnant outside of marriage, and at the end, she decides to have the baby. Not what the distribution world in Hollywood wants to be putting into theaters. So at that time, I was executive director of St. Vincent de Paul, so we're back a little bit, and I saw this movie. They showed it to 400 women at the old Adams Mark Hotel. I was the only guy in the room, and I said to the producer, I said, wow, this is a great pro-life movie. We want to help you. So we put the forces of St. Vincent de Paul behind it. We started doing screenings, and we rented out the Chase Park Plaza, the Starlight Room. We had 3 gigantic screens. We had 1,000 people there, and they would come around St. Louis, and they were devout Catholic guys. I'd take them to the Cathedral Basilica, and they were amazed. They said, oh, this is the most beautiful church in the country. I'd say, okay, I got a meeting, guys. I'll be back in an hour. You guys stay here and pray. I came back there in the Adoration Chapel on their knees on the floor, not on the kneelers, praying an hour later. So anyway, we became friends, and they became outstanding filmmakers. They did a movie in 2024 called Sound of Freedom. Anybody hear about, see that movie? Oh, quite a few people. Movie about child sex trafficking. Very tough subject, but the story needs to be told because it's got to be you've got to bring the light into the forces of evil. They made that movie, and we're trying to get distribution. The distributor, by contract, was 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox gets bought out by Disney. Disney sees the movie and they say, we're going to put that movie on the shelf. And they put it up there to never be distributed. And the filmmaker said, well, why? And purportedly they said, well, you know, it's about child sex trafficking. That's not going to sell. A lot of people think it was because a lot of the Disney people in Hollywood were into all kinds of mischief out there. If a movie comes out like this, they didn't want reporters going to all the movie stars, asking them what you've been doing, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, movie's on the shelf. There's a clause in the contract that the movie makers could buy back the rights to their own movie to distribute it for $3.5 million. So they start trying to raise the $3.5 million. 2021, I'm at the Napa Institute conference in Napa, California. A lot of high rollers there, and they're going to screen the movie. Eduardo Verostegui, one of the stars, one of the producers of the movie, is supposed to come in and screen the movie. He gets delayed, he can't make it, so I've become friends with these guys since Bella in 2006. I go, Zip, you just do the presentation. So I screened the movie for like 25 guys who were like multimillionaires, all Catholic guys. And I say, okay, we got to raise $3.5 million. Let's start chipping away. Who wants to get in? Not one person would put a penny into that movie. I said, guys, you saw this movie. It's an incredible movie. It's going to impact the culture. They said, Zip, you don't understand. We are investors. We invest money to make money. People go to movies to be entertained. Child sex trafficking is not entertaining. Nobody's going to go to see this movie. So took it to Chicago. I did another presentation there. Again, nobody would get in. The only reason that movie saw the light of day was Angel Studios, which was just starting out back in those days. And they decided to crowdfund it. They had never done this before. Now they do it all the time. And they put the trailer on YouTube and on their website and said, you can invest in this movie. You can invest from $100 on up. And 6,600 people collectively put in $5 million to get this movie into theaters for 12 days. So the filmmakers are thinking, well, when are we going to release the movie? We got the money, we got to get out there, but we got to pick the right time. So they had a meeting in Miami, and they said, well, the movie is Sound of Freedom because we're freeing these children. Let's release the movie on the 4th of July. This is America. And then they looked at the calendar and they said, wait a minute, 4th of July this year is on a Tuesday. No movies are released on a Tuesday because it's half-price day. So you never release a movie on Tuesday. But in that meeting was the real-life hero played by Jim Caviezel in the movie, Tim Ballard, and he said, you know what? One of those two kids that you see me rescue in the movie, I rescued her on the 4th of July. God is telling us, we've got to release this movie. So they decided to do it on the 4th of July. Jim Caviezel puts out a message on YouTube. It's just 2 minutes long, but it's Caviezel at his passionate best. And he says, look, there's child sex trafficking in this country. It's a horrible evil. We want 2 million people to show up on the 4th of July to represent the 2 million children impacted by sex trafficking and sucked into this in the last year. You got to be there on the 4th of July. Movie comes out, 4th of July. Other movies, the competition was the next version of Indiana Jones, all these huge, big, major motion pictures, summertime, 4th of July releases, all this other stuff. And on that day, Sound of Freedom does $14 million. It becomes the #1 movie in the country, beating all the other big releases. 6 days in after the first weekend, it's at $40 million. It goes on to make $251 million across the United States and across the world. They made that movie for $14 million. It was one of the biggest returns on investment of any movie in the history of the world. And all those rich guys out of Napa, nothing. I know 2 guys who put in $100,000 and they walked away with $1 million. Anyway, God is good. So we started working with them, and they made a movie called Cabrini about St. Francis Xavier Cabrini. They've got a new movie coming out in December called 0 AD. Curious title. It's about the birth of Jesus and how King Herod tried to kill the baby Jesus. It stars Jim Caviezel, Sam Worthington, Ben Mendelsohn, Gail Garcia Bernal, Diva Casale, the most beautiful model in Italy, playing the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's coming out in December. So what Mater Media does is we raise money on the front end for Catholic filmmakers who can make impactful movies, and then when the movie comes out, we promote it on the back end. We worked with Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman, who in 2016 did a movie called Unplanned. How many here have seen Unplanned? Small number. I'd highly recommend it. It's the true story of Abby Johnson, who participated in 22,000 abortions as one of the directors of Planned Parenthood, and then saw the light through God's grace, came over to 40 Days for Life and started shutting down abortion clinics. I think it's the most impactful, effective pro-life movie ever made. I don't think you can watch that movie with an open mind and say, abortion's okay. If you think it's all right, fine. It's a powerful, powerful movie. So we arranged some private screenings in St. Louis, 2 of them. One was at Chaminade High School. The other was at my house because we couldn't find any places to do these screenings. And we invited people of means. They saw the movie and they were so moved that they collectively put forth $62,000 to us as our nonprofit. We turned that $62,000 around and bought 6,000 tickets to opening weekend in St. Louis at 9 different theaters. That's all the theaters we could get was 9. And then we had to distribute the tickets. We partnered with Coalition Life, who was trying to shut down the abortion clinic on Forest Park and eventually did. And they built a website, so people just go on the website and say, okay, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this theater, I want to be at the 7 o'clock show at the Pear. We just put your name in. We'll have your name in a list. You just check in there. You don't need a ticket. We'll get you in. And amazingly, in about a week or so, we filled all the 6,000 seats. And the movie came out, and St. Louis was the #1 market in the country, not per capita, but in ticket sales for the movie, because the work that we did and influenced a ton of people. So we love to work with Catholic filmmakers. There's a story coming up that came out about the life of John O'Leary called Soul on Fire. How many have seen Soul on Fire? Wow, a lot more people. Good. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. My role in that was they were trying to raise money for the movie, and they knew that St. Louis people would probably be interested in investing because John's a St. Louis guy, and a lot of people in St. Louis know his amazing story. But they weren't investing because when you read movie scripts are written kind of with code and abbreviations and all kinds of stuff like that for starters. And then the way the movie was written, as you've seen it, there were a lot of flashbacks and flash forwards, because if they just told the story linearly about this kid who got burned, I mean, the first 45 minutes would be in the hospital and people would be thrown up and leaving the theater. So they had a flash forward and flashback, but on paper, the investors weren't understanding that because they weren't movie investors. So my role became to act out scenes from the screenplay for potential investors. So they'd put 25 wealthy people in a room, and I would act out every scene. It's okay, here's John, he's in the hospital, he's burned, they don't think he's gonna live. Now we're gonna flash forward to St. Louis University, and he's drunk. Now we're gonna come back and say, we get it. So the minimum was $100,000 to invest, and we got some people into the movie at that and made the movie. Sadly, the movie didn't do as well in theaters as we hoped. We got 1,700 theaters. Sony was the distributor. It did $7.4 million. We were hoping for 10 million, 20 million, whatever, and the investors were going to lose money. But after movies go on in theaters, they go to the platforms, to the social media, to your homes where so many people watch movies now. So Netflix bought the rights, and stunningly, in February, this past February, this movie became the #2 movie, like number of days a week. It started on a Friday, it was #5. We said this in the country on Netflix, and then went up to #4 on Saturday, and on Sunday it was #2. And a number of days in February was the #2 movie, most watched movie in America. So the word about John O'Leary is getting out, and he's a tremendous person. If you haven't seen that one, go to Netflix and take a look. So anyway, we're publishing books, we're doing movies, and we look at what else good can we do in our apostolate. And we saw a big challenge was marriage. Marriage is hard. You guys who are married know it's hard. It's not easy. And we saw all kinds of Catholics struggling in their marriages. Divorce at a high rate, priests not knowing what to do, people torn apart. So a friend of mine named Chuck Neff wrote a book, a novel about marriage, a Catholic novel. And he brought it to us to publish. We loved it. We published it. So then he came back a few months later and said, I wrote a workbook based on the novel, a companion piece of 7 steps to how people can fix their marriage or help their marriage or strengthen their marriage or stay married. And we read that. It was great. So we published that. And then a few months later, he came back to us again. He says, we got the novel out there. It's getting great reviews on Amazon, but not enough people are reading it. And we got the workbook out there, but not enough people are doing it. We got to get people out of their houses. These married couples, they think they're all alone. They think their problems are they're the only people who have the problems that they have. So Chuck and myself and Kathy Gilmore at Mater Media put together something called the Celebrate Catholic Marriage Experience. And this starts with a one-night gathering of parishes, of couples in a parish. So married couples come and they have a night of fun and laughter and a unique format, and they all love it. And then we send them away with the workbook, with the novel, and with corresponding videos, which we put in their emails every Monday for 7 weeks. And we tell them to spend an hour a week with their spouse, without the kids, without the machines, without the computers, without the phones, and do those 7 steps, and they'll be helped in their marriage. Through God's grace, it's been a tremendous success. We've had it in 11 parishes. 640 Catholic married couples have come out in person and then done the 7 steps. And we're just continuing now with requests coming in from other parishes. But again, the irony of God, the humor of God. Here I am. I always wanted to get married and have kids. I was married once, very briefly, deceptive situation. The marriage was rightly annulled. Never been married before. And here I am emceeing all these Celebrate Catholic Marriage experiences for all these Catholic married couples. God has amazing ways of using us when we least expect it. So anyway, we're sitting around thinking, okay, we got the books, we got the movies, we got the marriage program. How else can we further our mission? Here's our mission statement at Mater Media. It always has been and always will be. To make Jesus Christ more known and more loved by more people through media. So we're thinking, what else can we do? And we're thinking, well, there's this speaker series called the Maryville Speaker Series. Anybody heard of that? It's been around for like 25 years. And, we took a look at that, and I think they used to have some really great speakers. And last year, the lead speaker, the first speaker they had was like Anthony Fauci. I'm going, I saw enough of that guy every day during COVID. I don't need to see him again. So then this year, there's a new series is coming up, and the first speaker is Pete Buttigieg. I mean, we love everybody, but I mean, what's he going to bring his husband on stage and tell us how great transgenderism is? I mean, and they're giving this guy the microphone at Powell Hall. I'm thinking, we can do better than that. Why don't we put together a group of Catholic speakers and form a speaker series? Let's find Catholics, not theologians, not preachers, but people who unabashedly live their Catholic faith and who influence the culture with the gifts that God has given them in movies and media and music and design and public speaking and in the priesthood. So we thought, can we do that? Can we put that together? So we thought, well, we're going to need a place. And we come up with the concept, well, we're not going to do this in church. We want to affect the community. We want to make Jesus more known and more loved by more people, whether they're practicing the faith or not. So we came up with the idea to make it compelling Catholic conversations in the public square. And we looked around. We went to Lindenwood University, public secular university, and they got this beautiful theater out there. Have you guys ever been to the Scheidegger Arts Center for the Arts? Not too many people. It's beautiful. It's 1,200 seats, balcony and wood paneling and huge concourse, free parking. And we said, wow, this is great. We can use this place. So we said, we'd like to rent this place, for a series of maybe 6 Catholic speakers. They said, okay, it'd be, how much is it? They said $12,000. We said, for all 6? They said, no, for each night. And we gulped and said, $12,000 just to open the doors and get in this place? But in faith, we said, well, our patroness is the Mother of God, and she does miracles. We will find donors, we'll find sponsors, we'll make this happen. So we began to line up speakers. And by the way, the money part of it, let me skip ahead to that. We were looking for sponsors for this. And when we announced the speakers, this group called there was a group called the Community of Transcendent Men down in Jefferson County. They were started by a priest by the name of Larry Huber, Father Larry Huber, who has been one of the speakers at this Zechariah prayer breakfast not too many years ago. I was here. Father Larry Huber, at the age of 61, 62, was tragically killed this past April on his motorcycle while he was carrying the Holy Eucharist to 2 elderly persons. A woman pulled out in front of him illegally. He crashed and died instantly on Easter Thursday in the 3 o'clock hour on a road called Mount Olive, carrying the Eucharist to people. True story. So, Father Huber had started something called the Community of Transcendent Men down in Jefferson County. And it grew over the years to 60, 80. Now they have 100 men who show up once a month for meetings and speakers. They all go on a retreat, and they all band together in smaller groups to be good fathers, strong husbands, and the spiritual leaders of their family. So when Father Huber passes away, we were pitching this to some of the leaders of that group as we pitched the speaker series. And Father Huber's estate and some of those Community Transcendent Men said, what's the title sponsorship? And we said, well, we got to raise a lot of money. It's $50,000. And they said, we're going to put that up. We're going to be your title sponsor. So we're going to further the legacy of Father Huber and try to expand the Community Transcendent Men to do what they do, to make men strong men and the kind of Catholic men that they should be for their families. But again, we were worried about money. Money starts coming in. Anyway, so we decided who we're going to get to speak. So we thought, well, how about John O'Leary? People saw his movie. He's one of the greatest speakers there is. He's spoken in 13 foreign countries to 2 million people, Fortune 500 companies, Major League Baseball teams, right on down to community theaters and little stuff. He's unbelievable. So we asked John, and he says, yeah. And his people tell us it's a $15,000 fee for him to speak. And we say, yeah, well, he's a great speaker. We'll pay it. And John calls us. He says, look, I'm going to do it for free. I want to help you guys get this thing off the ground. Amazing. So we think, who else are we going to get? We think we got to get some big names because nobody knows about this. And, Maryville's got Pete Buttigieg and all these big name guys. So how are we going to compete with that? So I'm thinking, well, I know Bill O'Reilly. So I called Bill O'Reilly. And Bill and I went to Boston University together. We went to school at the communications school there. Bill wrote news for the school university newspaper. I wrote sports. We became friends. 8 years later, unbeknownst to each other, we get hired by the same television station in Boston, Channel 7, Bill to do the news and me to do the sports. We show up for work and we see each other. Ah. So anyway, we become great friends. We move into the same condo complex. We're 2 single Catholic guys going to Mass on Sunday, double dating on Saturday nights, all this stuff. And I could tell you a million stories about the year we had together in Boston. They brought us in to shake things up because the station who hired us, we were young guys, was in 3rd place in a 3-station market. And remember, local TV was big money, big business back then. Every quarter they would do the ratings, and if your ratings weren't good, heads would be rolling. So they thought, well, let's bring in these wild men, O'Reilly and Rzeppa, to do the news and the sports and try to shake things up. So we said, great. So we were pushing the envelope. I mean, I don't have time to tell you all the stories, but here's one. This is when Larry Bird was leading the Celtics to championships. Everybody in Boston loved Larry Bird. So we'd be on the set to do the news. I'd be sitting next to O'Reilly, and we'd be going to the commercial break before sports. And O'Reilly would go, all right, coming up next in sports, the man Larry Bird loves to party with, the big Z, Zip Rzeppa. And we go to the commercial break. And I'd look at O'Reilly, I'd say, O'Reilly, I never partied with Larry Bird. He said, I know, but the ratings just went up 3 points. Every night it was something crazy we were doing. We were having the time of our life. And then we got fired. Not because we were too crazy, although we were pretty crazy, but the station got sold. And when TV stations get sold, the new owners come in and they fire all the executives, and all the new executives come in and fire the people on the air. And we were left in one bloodbath. They fired almost everybody. So O'Reilly and I are looking for work. He winds up in Portland, Oregon. I wind up in St. Louis. We call each other. We say, well, we'll be in these places for a year or two, which O'Reilly was in Portland. And here I am 45 years later. But anyway, Bill and I become very, very good friends. So I say, will you do this speaker series for us? He says, Big Z, I'm trying to get to heaven. And if I come into St. Louis and do this speech for you, maybe that'll help me. I said, good. So we booked Bill O'Reilly for October 15th, 19 days before the election. He's got a new book coming out in September. Never comes to St. Louis. It's going to be huge. So we thought, well, let's find a woman to mix into the mix. And it was hard to find a Catholic woman who could really draw people. So I'd heard of Ira DeWitt. I knew she was the wife of Bill DeWitt III, who owns the St. Louis Cardinals, the president of St. Louis Cardinals, the son of Bill DeWitt Jr. Bill DeWitt III just promoted to CEO a couple weeks ago. I knew she was married to him, and I knew she was Catholic because she had this candle business that I saw online. She was making these candles. And the story was she had a friend who had cancer, and she wanted to get her a beautiful candle, scented candle. And St. Peregrine is the cancer saint, patron of cancer patients. So she tried to find a candle, and she couldn't find any. So she went to a candle making company, and she said, well, I want a candle of St. Peregrine. And they said, well, we can make them, but the minimum order is 250 candles, and they're, $25 a piece. And they're So being Ira DeWitt, she said, okay, I'll put out $12,000, whatever it is, and she bought 250 candles. But she says, there's got to be a better way to do this. So she started her own candle-making business of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which I loved, and 25 different saints. And we started researching what she was doing, and she had a fascinating life. I just thought she was the wife of Bill DeWitt III, and maybe making some candles. She was born in Turkey, and she moved to Canada, and she came to St. Louis to study at St. Louis University as a young woman. And she got a master's degree and then a doctorate, a PhD in educational psychology, and became a professor of psychology at St. Louis University. And then she marries Bill DeWitt III. And then she meets Nellie, the rapper, and she gets into rap music. And Nellie introduces her to all these foul-mouthed rapper guys in the huge industry of rap music. And she decides to start her own urban rap label. Anyway, for 15 years, she's working in the mire of all these foul-mouthed rappers. And then she sees the light, and she reverts to her Catholicism and begins becoming an evangelizer who is on fire with the Catholic faith, and I mean on fire. She's got the candles going. She's a third-generation jeweler. This woman's abilities and versatility is unbelievable. She starts designing 16 karat, 18 karat, 24 karat gold, holy bracelets and rosary necklaces that are selling for $10,000 a pop. She recently sent a check for $300,000 to St. Jude Children's Hospital from the proceeds of these holy stuff she's selling. I'm thinking, man. Then she starts a Catholic app, and it's great. It's got the mass readings, it's got saints quotes, it's got stories, it's got witnesses on the app. Then she starts a Catholic podcast. She becomes the interviewer of all these Catholic influencers. How does this woman get around doing all this stuff? And all the big names are doing her, and she's there interviewing people. Then she goes to Europe, and she decides to make videos, high-end videos of the importance of the saints down through the centuries and how their lives are relevant to us in the Catholic world today. So anyway, I get her email from Bill DeWitt III, and I ask her if she wants to come in and do this. And she says, yeah, this is a Catholic thing? Yeah, I'll come in and do it. She says, but I don't want to stand at a podium and give a 60-minute talk or anything. Can we do like an interview format? Could you interview me, Zip? I said, Ira, I would love to interview you. So we're going to make that an interview format. All these ones, we're calling them compelling Catholic conversations in the public square, because it's not just going to be a speech. Sure, O'Reilly's going to come in and pontificate as he always does, and John O'Leary's a great speaker, but at all of them, we're going to ask the audience to submit the one question they always want to ask Bill O'Reilly, or John O'Leary, or Ira DeWitt. And we're going to have them sit in chairs with me. I'm the moderator, I'm the host, and we're going to ask them those questions. So it really will be compelling Catholic conversations in the public square. That's three of our speakers. Our fourth speaker is Eric Jennis, the composer, pianist extraordinaire, who devotes his life to going into prisons with world-class violinists and cellists and vocalists to bring light into the darkest places in the world. He has an amazing personal life of suffering. 7 miscarriages, a 21-year-old daughter with Down syndrome, a 25-year-old son with Asperger's who was bullied his whole life and took his own life, a granddaughter, 5 years old, that her mother abandoned, his adopted daughter. And through it all, he composes the most beautiful music in the world and tells stories about his personal life and inmates who have inspired him to write this music. He's doing a Christmas concert at the Scheidegger Center, Linwood, in December. Then we take some time off because we couldn't get dates, and over Christmas in Lent, we're bringing in Leo Severino. He was the producer that I didn't mention by name, but he's the guy that did Bella and Sound of Freedom and Cabrini and is doing Zero AD, a devout Catholic guy. He was the head of the Fox Media Group with Fox Network and left because they were going woke. And now he's making movies, started making movies. He's in, and then our sixth speaker is Cardinal Timothy Dolan. Don't want to say anything more about him. He'll be our speaker in Easter week in 2027. So anyway, got to wrap this up. We have those brochures on the table. I guess the rest of them over there by Gary. We're selling tickets. We sold more than 700 tickets. We have about 1,100 seat capacity. Zechariah Prayer Group, we're going to give you a 25% discount because you're part of this group. The discount thing is in your brochure. Just go to the website and buy your tickets. ZEC25 is the code. It's in your thing. Zech is the nickname of Zechariah. I don't know if it is, but he is today. It is now. So there you go for the discount. So anyway, guys, my time is up. I just want to tell you one more thing is to do the will of God. I just try to answer his will and consent to his will, and just urge you to try to discern what his will is and do that. I'll close with another quote from Thomas Merton from that book, New Seeds of Contemplation. By consenting to God's will and doing it with gladness, I have his love in my heart, because my will is now the same as his love, and I am on the way to becoming what he is, he who is love. And by accepting all things from him, I receive his joy into my soul, not because things are what they are, but because God is who he is, and his love has willed my joy in them all. God bless you, gentlemen. Thank you for listening to me today.